Hello and welcome to interesting conversation here about WebRTC. I'm Dave Michaels from Talking Points, and yesterday some news came out of Twilio about some changes about WebRTC. The questions start coming in right away, and I wasn't really able to answer them all, and so I decided to host this conversation with, and I'm delaying introducing him by name because I always say it wrong. He never complains about it. He just smiles and say, "Okay, that's fine. I know who you're talking about." But I will attempt to introduce. I'm going to say Tsahi or Tsahi. I can't say his name. I've tried so many times, but I can't say it. But let's bring him in. I'm going to say Tsahi. Welcome, Tsahi. How are you? Say your name for everybody.
Well, I'll say it in English, Tsahi Levent-Levi, and then in Hebrew it's Tsahi Levent-Levi. So it's
okay. Well, so we'll just call you whatever. So
yes.
Thank you for joining us. You are, in my opinion, the godfather of WebRTC. I know there's actually quite a few godfathers of WebRTC. It was a team effort, but you are the one that is just, that is still actively involved in this community. And so whenever I get a WebRTC question, I turn to you. And actually, I've met you in person many times. But when I went to Israel, you hosted me. You took me around. We went to Jerusalem. It was fantastic.
Yep.
Oh, I got a question for you. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if things have changed. But your son used to really be into Batman. Is that still true, or has he changed that?
He's Doctor Strange. And for some reason, he decided that I like Batman. So I now have this thing over here.
Wait, there you go. All right. Well, that's good. That's good. There you go.
So that's not now mine. But yes, he's still into Marvel and stuff.
Okay. Well, good. Well, there's only one Batman in my opinion. It's Adam West. I got here my framed autographed picture of Adam West. Show him that, and we'll talk. But he's too young; he doesn't even know who Adam West is. But anyway, let's get to WebRTC. So first off, just a brief introduction of you. You have your own site, bloggeek.me. You and I've just searched on the hashtag WebRTC. You're bound to find something that you've written by this gentleman. So, and you've been working with a lot of companies, including Twilio, over the years of their WebRTC offerings. So, first question for you is, what exactly did Twilio actually announce? What did they shut down? What do you think is going on here? What was the clear announcement?
So they just wrote it. They are going to close down to sunset a service they call Twilio Programmable Video, which is their programmable video. If you want to build something like a video chat, multi-party, one-on-one, whatever, this kind of a service that we're running, okay, then you need to use something called WebRTC, usually. And you usually go to a third party called the CPaaS vendor, Communication Platform as a Service. Twilio is one of them. And if they have video APIs, you use them to build your application. So what they decided to do is to close that service down.
Now, there were years when Jeff Lawson used to say Twilio has never retired an API. So when they shut down the service, does that retire the API? Does it actually just go away? What's going on here? If you built an application that's using this service, will it continue to work?
Until the 5th of December, 2024. So you've got a year to go down to migrate to something else.
Okay. So, and this is, as I recall, it was I think it was Currento, right? Twilio acquired this technology when they acquired Currento. It must have been around, 2018 or something like that?
I think it was, so Twilio started by adding WebRTC to their voice stuff, which makes sense for call centers to be able to have agents running in the browser. Then they started doing video. They did video peer-to-peer, which means one-on-one calls. And then when they wanted to do multi-party, they understood that they need a media server. And instead of developing one or using an open source one, they simply went and acquired that technology from a service called Currento and took them off the market. That was, I think, between 2015 to 2017, something like that. Time flows fast.
So Twilio's formally announced that they're going to shut down the programmable video service, and they put about a 1 year timer on it, or almost probably exactly a 1 year timer on it. And so 1 year is either quick panic for some companies, or relax, you got plenty of time for other companies. And so first off, did Twilio give any options? Did they give any recommendations to their customers?
Yes. So this is funny because a year ago they shut down another service called Twilio Live. Nobody cared because it was a new service. Just went into GA 2 or 3 months later. They just shut it down. And when they shut that one down, they decided to say, you know what, go to MOOCs, use their service instead. Now, MOOCs actually, MOOCs, M-U-X. Okay. It's a company that does live streaming. Now, MOOCs also has a competitor to Twilio Programmable Video, and I just couldn't understand why they're sending a customer towards a competitor with something that they have. Then they decided that they don't want the Twilio IoT service. That was, again, last year or earlier this year. And instead of shutting it down, they sold it to Core Wireless. Just as is, send them there, and that's it. What they did with the programmable video, they said we're shutting it down. So it's not as if we're selling it to someone or it's going to stay there. It's going to get killed. And our recommendation, ta-da, Zoom.
Zoom.
Go to Zoom.
I don't really think of Zoom as a CPaaS type of company. I mean, I know they have a number of APIs, but there's a lot of other companies that are aggressively saying we're CPaaS companies.
Yep.
Did that surprise you that they said Zoom?
Yes. Yes and no. Okay, let's start with yes. Zoom does have an SDK. There is something called Zoom Video SDK, which you can use to build an application, a video application, similar to the same thing that you can do with any other video API platform or any other CPaaS platform that does video. The main difference is that they don't really use WebRTC there. They use WebAssembly plus web codecs and web transport, something slightly different. On a native application, meaning if you're running this on a mobile device with an application that you've built, not inside the browser, you don't care, it's good. But if you need a browser, it's some part what you can do with WebRTC, at least today. And this is why in the most cases, you don't hear about them. Because as a company, if I actually need to build a service and run it on the browser, the way I would do that, if I try to use Zoom, it would be okay. That's nice, but it doesn't work. Let's move on to something else. And I guess that's what's going to happen to some of Twilio's customers. Every customer that needs a web browser is going to find out that there are other solutions that are just way better, at least, again, today. Why I'm saying at least today? Because this web transport, web codecs, WebAssembly thing is going to improve over time, not because of Zoom, but because of the browser vendors. And with time, things will improve there. But today, if you're trying to do a call with WebRTC versus the alternatives inside the browser, WebRTC is better. Okay,
interesting.
Anyone here listening, they can think about the last time that they opened Zoom inside their browser with a link, and instead of opening the application that pops up, they decided, no, please continue to the browser. Nobody does that. And the reason nobody does that is because it's clunky.
Interesting. Okay. So we're going to get to, you kind of set us up for the obvious question I should ask now is what are all the alternatives that they should consider? But we'll get to that in just a minute. I want to go down this other thread here first. So the obvious question coming out of this, I mean, Twilio's going through, they're under a lot of pressure. They're making lots of changes. They've been selling off, as you mentioned, some of their products. So if they can just shut down this video business, not even sell it. If they could shut it down, isn't that kind of an indication this is a small business and it's not very valuable? And then doesn't that suggest or imply that video, or I'll even go to more, WebRTC is dead and over? I mean, is that the takeaway?
Yes, let's shut it down and move on. So first of all, no, because Twilio still has programmable voice, which shockingly uses WebRTC for doing voice calls in browsers. And every call center agent in the world that uses a browser is likely to use that probably 50% of the time, at least today, without him knowing that this is what's happening in the background. Okay, so this isn't doing anything bad for WebRTC. As for video, well, I remember working at a large company that was 10, 12 years ago. And then they wanted me to go and look at CPaaS because CPaaS was interesting. There were two companies at the time, Tropo and Twilio, no one else. And they were these small. And then we looked at it. We brought even one of the consultants from the US at the time, went through that for a full week. We go to the general manager, we show him that. We say, oh, it's a $400 million industry. It's going to grow. He looks at that and he says, for a $400 million industry, I'm not going to wake up in the morning. And then he just passed it away. Today, it's a lot larger in size. And I think that Twilio got to the same point or the same problem. Video was very tiny versus the other things that they are doing in terms of revenue, but it was starting to take too much of the attention span of the managers. So it was costing them more than the revenue that it can bring in the next few years. So they just had to decide what to do with it. Shutting it down made sense because the Twilio video product was built right into what they did. What do I mean by that? Twilio IoT started by an acquisition that they made. I don't remember the name of the company. There were two companies that they acquired and then built everything around that. Twilio Video started internally, and then the acquisition of Currento wasn't the creation of the APIs. It was just a building block inside the actual product. So my guess is that what they did was use all of the infrastructure that they have for communication APIs in order to build the service itself. And now taking it out, tearing it out and selling it to someone is a very hard thing to do because it's too integrated with the core things that you have. So you can't really sell it. And then the question is, who do you sell it to? Okay, and that's not an easy question to answer.
I see. One thing you didn't touch on there, but kind of going through my mind, is while the market may have gotten bigger, the competitors have also increased. And so maybe their particular slice is getting smaller, but the market is still getting bigger.
Yes, that's true.
Okay.
And the competitors are also different. When Twilio started, you had like Vonage, Agora, a few other small startups, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Today, you've got also Microsoft and Amazon.
Yeah, the Chime SDK at Amazon.
Yeah. So the Chime SDK, especially, that's a different ballgame.
Yeah.
And then they didn't innovate, Twilio, at least on the video side, whereas you see a lot of the other CPaaS vendors innovating a lot, especially through the pandemic. And that kind of kept them behind.
Okay, so let's get into this task here. A developer has created a wonderful application using Twilio's APIs for video, and now they're tasked with changing that. Now, I know there's no universal answer that applies to every developer, but I guess my question to you is this a hard thing? I mean, is WebRTC, or does every CPaaS provider kind of have a different API and you have to rewrite everything, or how big of a lift is this going to be for everybody?
So I guess the answer to the question is it depends. Okay, it's a sad answer, but it is the answer I can give. I have, like in the last 5 years, I've seen multiple vendors switching from one provider to another, switching from in-house development to a CPaaS vendor, from a CPaaS vendor to in-house development, from one CPaaS vendor to another, trying to use both and switching between as they see fit. So we've got a lot of different alternatives out there for developers when they are building these things. For those that did something simple, let's say one-on-one call, healthcare with a bit of recording, it shouldn't be that big of a deal. Okay, but if you start going down that path and saying, well, we had a monitoring solution on top of that, we exported the data in one way, we've integrated the recordings with our own S3 buckets and stuff, and we did a specialized encryption or whatever, or we are doing multi-party and we've optimized it to specifically the things that we're doing, then you're going to need to do it all over again, just with another vendor.
Isn't the killer app in doorbells? The video doorbells seem to be proliferating all over the place, and I know the original ones were built on just a simple like a CPaaS type of video service, but that so that should be pretty easy. Just to take something like that and just change your provider. No,
maybe because then it's not a one-on-one call; it's a doorbell to a person call.
I see.
What is the operating system of the camera in there? And then if you have used Twilio for that, and I'm assuming you haven't, by the way, then you probably used something like a Linux SDK to be able to run there. And I don't believe that Twilio has that, for example. Whereas if you go to Amazon, they have a Linux SDK. You go to Vonage, they have a Linux SDK. We go to Agora, I believe they also have a Linux SDK. So
well, now you're getting to my next question here. The next question is the meat of our conversation, but you've already spoiled everything here. Let's talk about some of the alternatives. So there's going to be some mainstream alternatives, like you mentioned Vonage already. That was the old TalkBox, right?
yes.
You got the mainstream alternatives, and then I bet there's some pretty non-obvious alternatives that maybe you can throw out there too. So let's kind of go through some of these.
Yeah, so the obvious ones are probably Agora, Vonage, and Amazon. No, not necessarily in this order. If you checked 3 years ago, the top 3 were Twilio, Vonage, and Agora. Why? Just because everyone that came into this market said, okay, I want to get a measurement or do a white paper or whatever, comparing me to them. What is them? These 3. Why? Because what happened then is that at some point, vendors started looking and saying, well, you know what? Let's also look at Amazon SDK. Now that happened because it's Amazon, obviously, and you can't lose by selecting Amazon. It also gives you a single throat to choke with your bill. And then there's a part of if you're a startup, someone is paying that, and that's
that
not
is
you.
Unchokeable, by the way. I just want to clarify that.
Yes. No, but you have one single vendor that you go and complain
one
to.
Single vendor to be really mad at, but that doesn't care. Yeah. But yes, okay, all right.
And then the other thing is, if you're a startup, they're going to pay you $10,000 a month for a year, just for you to run on their service in terms of credits in their service, not actual money. So that's a huge incentive.
Google was behind, was one of the instigators early of WebRTC. Did they ever come out with a SDK or no? What about video? Video became part of the Canadian company.
Enghouse.
Enghouse. Yeah, Enghouse. Didn't Enghouse release some sort of SDK or something?
Yes. There was Video.io that was an SDK and like a managed service. Enghouse changed that, and I have no clue what goes on there now in terms of is that an API, is that how open that is.
Yeah.
Other vendors that are interesting, I would say Daily. Daily is a really interesting company, daily.co. The reason they are interesting is because they come with a kind of an embeddable UI to begin with. So you can either go and use the API layer and build everything on your own, or we can just take the whole UI and then customize it to your look and feel and with your additional features, which makes the development a lot easier and faster. It's different in terms of the experience. And a lot of companies and vendors are going that route today because that's the low-code, no-code route of CPaaS in the form of the video APIs. Then there's Dolby. Dolby.io is also very interesting. And that's because of their focus in audio quality, 3D sound, spatial audio, and stuff like that, and also live streaming at large scale. They've acquired Millicast that does exactly that. So for audio files, that's probably the best platform.
Now, as far as the UCaaS space goes, you've got you've mentioned Vonage, you haven't mentioned RingCentral, you haven't mentioned Microsoft. You haven't mentioned Microsoft. What about 8x8 and their Jitsi platform? Talk about some of these guys.
The other 2 interesting ones are 8x8 because of Jitsi as a service platform that they have. Again, this is a full-fledged UI that you can just slap into the application, change a bit the look and feel, and you're done, which is also great. The advantage of them is also the advantage of another company called LiveKit, because both of them are built on top of open source platforms. So there is LiveKit open source, LiveKit managed service, there is Jitsi open source, and there's Jitsi as a service. And in both cases, you can say, you know what? If they decide to close shop, at least I have some kind of a thing that I can run on my own later on.
Okay.
It's half true, but will not get there. It's just, it comforts you. It's nice to know when you go to sleep at night. More so, it gives you the flexibility of what to run open source and what is a managed service. So they are really interesting, these two. You've got in India new companies doing stuff. There is 100ms, for example, that is doing the same video APIs. And there is Dyte from there, DYTE. You've got Zigo Cloud from China, which is competing with Agora. So they're on par in terms of the feature sets. So there are lots of different alternatives out there, which means that it's not going to be an easy decision.
What about
Yes,
Microsoft and
Microsoft.
their Zero Communication Services?
So let's start with this. We've got let's say we've got 4 large IaaS platforms. There's Amazon, we've talked about them, that's great. The other one is Google, we've talked about them. They have no APIs for WebRTC, which is mind-boggling, considering the fact that they're WebRTC. They just now started adding APIs so we can build stuff on top of Google Meet. And that's, again, ridiculous because, that's 4 years ago, you should have done that. So maybe 4 years from now, we will have a CPaaS platform from Google. And then the third one is Microsoft. They have the Azure Communication Services, which is essentially the backend infrastructure of Microsoft Teams. It's great, but it seems that they're not putting their hearts in it in terms of the level of like what you can do with it. It's not on par with Microsoft Teams. It's a bit behind with the APIs, at least as far as I know. I'm trying to track all of these platforms and vendors and all of the blog posts and announcements that are putting out. I haven't seen enough from Microsoft versus, for example, Amazon on the same things. They have a few customers that I know of. That's about it, what I can say about them. And then the fourth one is actually Cloudflare. And Cloudflare also started to do things around WebRTC. They've got turn service, a managed transfer service, they have a live streaming service, and they have multi-party calling service. How good these are, I don't know. They're relatively new in this market, a year or two only.
All right. All right. Well, let's wrap this up then with the last question. General advice to Twilio's customers. Wisdom. Okay.
Switch to another platform. Okay. Now, the fact that
I thought you were
Twilio
going to say give up on WebRTC and put in a camcorder.
Sunset your service a year from now and find something else to do. So here's the thing. If switching from Twilio to anything else would be as hard as switching from Twilio to Zoom, which means that it's nice that Twilio recommended using Zoom, but I don't see any advantage of going specifically to them. It means two things. First of all, it's bad for you, because if the alternative was Zoom, it's easy. You just go there and you're done. Okay, you just chug along until it works. So you don't have that comfortability, or you need to risk which platform you're taking. It's a good thing because it opens up a decision of where you should go. And usually customers that use these platforms that are older, by older I not mean the fact that they're old, but the fact that someone let them rot over time, which is, let's be frank, what Twilio did for programmable video, then you were probably in the point of thinking of switching in the last 2 years at some point, and you started looking around. So you're now at the point where you must switch, which is good for you because, only good things can come from that at some point.
Interesting.
Start by looking at the requirements that you have from scratch. What are the things that you really need to use? What are the things that you didn't like about Twilio and you need to use? Okay, what did you decide not to do because you're using Twilio, and what's in your roadmap for the next year or two? Then go and shop around for these vendors. Look at them, ask them, talk to their customers, because these vendors have customers. Understand what they're doing and try to listen and feel what problems and challenges customers have with the other platforms and what they like about the other platforms. In each of these platforms, there are going to be issues, and in each there are going to be good things. Some platforms are good at some things. As I said, if you want to be the solution for audio files that does high quality audio, like for people that need to deal with the music, go to Dolby. I wouldn't even think. I just go use Dolby. If you want to rapidly develop and use a ready-made UI, well, Daily or Jitsi, okay, 8x8. These are the things. This is like how my mind would think immediately of solutions. So figure out what are the things that are important to you, validate that, do your homework there, and then start playing around with it. Now, there are also those that say, you know what, build an abstraction layer so you can replace everything below. I'm not a fan of that unless you have a really good reason to do that, because doing that takes more time, and usually there are going to be a lot of edge cases that you'll need to handle on your own anyway. So I wouldn't waste the time unless this is something that it's critical for you.
Very good. Well, I can't thank you enough. I know it's late for you right now in the day, and appreciate you sharing your wisdom. I've got your blog geek there. I'm sure you've contact information on your site. So again, thank you very much. And everybody else, thank you for watching.
Thanks for having me, Deb.